And then
welcome to BidBuy training for DNR. My name is Paula Martell from Procurement.
I'm Andy Hennig, State Purchasing Officer with the Chief Procurement Office.
What we are going to go through on the training today is actually training you on BidBuy requisition entry and also processing a bid. We call this our Level 2 training, Level 1 being just requisition only. In terms of our, we'd like to share with you our outline for the presentation today. And we're going to provide an overview of the system and discuss BidBuy document types, then discuss general navigation of the system. We're going to look up a master contract through BidBuy, then show you how to process two different procurements, one above $10,000 and one below $10,000, and then we'll discuss the next steps, what you do after watching this video. Before we get too much further, though, I wanted to go over the training packet that you received, and in that training packet, all the materials that we're going to discuss in training, and then what will be helpful for you after training when you are registered in BidBuy and ready to enter your procurements. So and actually, to look at the packet that you received, you should have in order a copy of the presentation from today, and then you should have two directions for looking up a master contract, one without registration in BidBuy, which is what we're going to demo today, and then one as a registered user, which you can save for later once you're registered. Then we also have some of the forms that we're going to attach through the system and that you will be attaching when you're entering your live procurements, we'll call them. You have a procurement justification form copy and a copy of the small business set-aside waiver, which many of you would already know how to complete, but we're going to just go over that again. Then you should have two examples, one a small purchase over $10,000 and then a small purchase below $10,000. And then you'll have two job aids, and they are noted with a job aid at the top, and that's a step-by-step how to complete, how to enter your procurement in BidBuy, how to process it once you're live. So before we move on any further, I just wanted to go over real quick why you might be attending the training or listening to the training. Well, you were selected or were volunteered to assist your office with small purchases. Before BidBuy, you may recall that you used the Illinois Procurement Gateway to check for vendors, look up vendors and an associated NIGP code, and then sent vendors an email obtaining your quotes. You assembled that procurement packet and submitted it to procurement with your contract request form. Well, now this process is, you're still going to follow the same process, but it's going to be done through a system and, of course, through BidBuy. Previously, procurement didn't really have to see a procurement below $10,000 unless it needed a small business waiver. But now everything $10,000 and above must be in BidBuy. 2,000 above, I'm sorry. 2,000 and above must be in BidBuy. Even with adding procurement staff, we cannot keep up with the volume of procurements that every office has. So that's why we need your assistance, and to make things more efficient in terms of processing your purchase, we will be entering everything over $2,000 in BidBuy. To overview the workflows as they exist today, for IGAs over $10,000, we are still going to use the PVC remedy process. You'll still complete the PVC info form, and that's located on our intranet. But if you're familiar with processing procurements before, you would enter your IGA, which is an intergovernmental agreement, over $10,000, continue to process that through the PVC process. For orders against master contract, procurement staff will continue to process those at this time, so you'll complete your purchase request, contract request form with all that information and route it through your normal channels, and then procurement will process that order. For everything under $2,000, there's no procurement involvement, so you can process your need or handle your need and take care of that and then invoice. For everything $2,000 to $10,000, that will now be in BidBuy, that is still a small purchase that's been delegated to the agency for SPSA waiver approvals and for approval of that procurement. It does not include state purchasing officer, which is SPO involvement. Offices, you will prepare the requisition through BidBuy and obtain your quotes. For procurements from between $10,000 and up to $100,000, which is the small purchase threshold, offices you will prepare the requisition and the bid. Procurement, CMS, and state purchasing officer approvals will be in BidBuy. For procurements over $100,000, they will be through BidBuy still. Those are our formal solicitations for our invitation for bids and our request for proposals. Offices will prepare the requisitions for those, and then procurement will take over from there in terms of completing that procurement, working with you on the scope of work and conducting the bidding, etc., through the system. For some special procurement types like sole sources, any change orders for current contracts, renewals, just contact procurement, because these are processes that are still really being tweaked in the system, and for the most part, procurement will process those procurements. They might ask you to enter requisition, but otherwise procurement will process those for your office. Just engage procurement when you have that need arise. For emergencies, so even though we have a system where things have to be entered through the system, if you have an emergency at your facility or at your site, please address your emergency as you do now. Work with the vendors, make that need as competitive as you can, or address that as competitive as you can in terms of selection of a vendor. And of course, ensure that it is a true emergency. It is a threat to public health and safety, you're protecting against further loss or damage, minimizing disruption of services related to health and safety or collection of revenue. So a true emergency, address emergency as you do now, and then contact procurement very quickly after, within a day or two after you've started addressing your emergency, so that they can be engaged and let you know how to process that through the system. To move on to discuss an overview of BidBuy, what we would talk about, we'll talk about how the system came to be in the state of Illinois. It was a joint e-procurement initiative of the CPOGS, that stands for Chief Procurement Office of General Services, and CMS, and they procured a system called BidBuy from a company, Periscope, and that is an off-the-shelf system that was customized and configured for the state of Illinois. It integrates with the Illinois Procurement Gateway, which the gateway is a repository, if you will, for vendors to have many documents on file that frequently bid on procurements with the state of Illinois, and is also a location for small business vendors to sign up and maintain their registrations. So anyone registered in the Illinois Procurement Gateway is then automatically registered in BidBuy. So that was a very great assistance to us, as many of our of course, all of our small purchases are first directed towards small business vendors. The BidBuy system also integrates with some waivers and reporting from the Procurement Policy Board, and eventually our contract data in BidBuy will integrate with SAP, which is a new financial system that we'll eventually be going to. What is staying the same, even though we're moving to this new system? The requirements for justifying your procurement are staying the same. So if previously you may have used a remedy system with completing a information form for entering that procurement to remedy, now you'll do the same type of, or filling out the same type of form called the procurement justification form for its entry into BidBuy. Also, what is staying the same is our use of NIGP codes, and that stands, it's an acronym that stands for the National Institute of Governmental Purchasing. Those are commodity and service codes that many states use, national codes. And just like searching for a vendor in the Illinois Procurement Gateway by those codes, you'll also be able to search for vendors and basically enter your procurements in this system by use of those codes. What else is not changing is requirements for wet ink contracts. And by wet ink contracts, we mean a paper contract. So a contract needs to be prepared over $20,000, and that's required for filing, a requirement of the comptroller, so we can file and make payments. So we'll still be preparing contracts for any procurements over $20,000. And finally, the SBSA program, the Small Business Set-Aside program, is not changing. There are wanted to share some information about what systems and processes were previously being utilized will now be part of BidBuy and integrated into one system. And wanted to point out on the bottom of that previous column, the actual procurement file will be now housed electronic. So there's lots of attachments that you will provide and that procurement will also provide as procurements move through BidBuy. Also, CPO, that's Chief Procurement Office, and SPO, the State Purchasing Officer approvals will be through the system. This slide just provides an overview of BidBuy for the state of Illinois. So the state of Illinois is the parent organization, and then there are many agencies that are utilizing BidBuy statewide, and we are one of those agencies as a child organization in that box on the left. And in the system, departments are offices, our IDNR offices, and locations are either divisions or regions, if your office is set up that way in the system. So that's how you'll actually enter your procurement. BidBuy system terminology, some previous names you might have known or become familiar with and now changing and related to the system. So a solicitation or notice is now called a bid. Moving further down, a bid, offer, or response will be a quote in the system. Award information is actually called a bid tab. And a contract and PO, the contract, again, is not going away, but we actually have the ability to create a PO, a purchase order, which denotes an approval in the system. So we'll also be using that term quite a bit. And then if you have an existing contract and have a change to it, an amendment to it, we would call that a change order. This document, we're going to cover a little bit of this document in further slides, but we wanted to point out the general document structure in BidBuy. As you enter a procurement will move from a requisition to a bid and then a purchase order. Under the bid itself, there's also called the bid tab, which we just talked about being the award information. But the top part of this form, right underneath the discussion about the documents themselves, in the green there is a document numbering. And that looks like a large number. You don't have to remember that whole number as your document moves through the system, but we wanted to point out what that does mean. So the 18 obviously is the fiscal number, or the fiscal year. Our 422 DNR is our agency identifier. The DIREC is actually one of the department codes. That's the Director's Office procurement, this particular example was. And the most important part of this number is the document letter. So there's a requisition in that numbering stands for, an R stands for requisition, a B would stand for a bid, and a P stands for a purchase order. Your procurement will not maintain the same number as it moves through the system, but they're easily accessible by just knowing whether it's an R, B, or a P currently in the system, and then that number. And we will assist you and show you how to do that, how to look a procurement up based on those numbers. The document descriptions we're going to go over slide by slide in just a few moments. And the bottom of the slide just talks about some legacy systems that are being replaced with BidBuy. So moving on to discussing the exact document types, a requisition allows agencies to place requests for goods or services. And we will be completing open market requisitions. And we're going to show you exactly how to do that. A Then a bid is created, and this actually publishes your request for goods and services in BidBuy. For large procurements like an invitation for bid or a request for proposal, this replaces the Illinois Procurement Bulletin. If you have a change to that bid, that's called an amendment and is done again through the system. You'll be able to open and award a bid, and a bid tab, which is where all the quotes are viewed and can be recommended there, recommended a vendor. Then a purchase order gets created and any change orders that need to be associated with that purchase order. So to summarize, what is a requisition then? It restates that allows agencies to place our request for goods or services. There are different types of requisitions, but the one bolded in open market requisition, you will be entering an open market requisition. And these are high-level steps on how to do this. We're going to how to accomplish and enter your requisition, but we will go through this step by step. But for the most part, you're going to create a new requisition, complete some tabs, and then submit this requisition for approval. There are documents that need to be attached at the requisition level. Every time you create a requisition, you're going to attach a contract request form. We're going to discuss that when we have our examples and practice attaching one, but everyone, for the most part, knows what a contract requisition is for our department, and we're going to talk about how to attach that in just a few moments. But we will also be attaching what's called that procurement justification form. That is for all procurements, 10,000 and over, and there's that form in your handout, which gives you a copy of that form. This form needs to be uploaded to your requisition. That's over 10,000 for your procurement, and you will attach the electronic version. We don't want a scanned copy of that. You will complete that and provide the electronic version, because we have to take that form in procurement and add some other information for approvals. The Word version of that form is located on our SharePoint, and then the file name is the procurement justification form over 10,000, because that's when it's needed, and it's not an IDA. Another form that will be utilized in attachments in BidBuy is the Small Business Set-Aside Program Waiver. And many of you are familiar with completing this form, but we wanted to include it here just because it's an important form that will be utilized. It applies to all procurements under $100,000 because that is our small purchase threshold. You will enter the requisition before you prepare your waiver. So previously, you may have gone out to the gateway, searched under a code, and maybe not found a small business vendor listed under a code, and then actually completed your waiver. Well, to actually document that process, you will enter your requisition and put that requisition through, and then once we confirm that there's not that there's a need for a waiver, then we would actually get your waiver then and attach that. And please use the most current version of your waiver, and right now that is version 16.1. You will complete each section of the waiver. You will enter your original requisition or possibly your bid number at the top of that waiver and enter the information in all the appropriate boxes. Your waiver must be signed. Digital signature is acceptable, and we're going to show you when you're going to do this, but it will be attached when we clone the requisition or clone the bid, and that's a word we'll explain here in just a bit. This slide, we wanted to highlight the status name on this slide. So as a procurement moves through the system, it starts in progress like a draft mode, and then it moves through several steps, we'll call, on its way to being approved. It might get returned to you for some additional information, but we wanted to make sure that this was useful to you later on when you were getting in the system and not really quite sure where things or what stage a procurement was in. You could reference this document. So what is a bid? It actually publishes your request for goods or services in BidBuy. You'll notify your vendors in BidBuy, looking them up based on those NIGP codes. Again, the type of bid that we will complete. is an open market bid. We will then process that and publish a bid. So once it's created, we will convert this requisition to bid. We'll add some missing information, reviewing and update some of the tabs. We're going to submit this for approval and send out the bid. And once a bid has been sent out and is ready to open, after the bid opening date is upon you, then you can actually navigate to opening the bid in the system. You will look at the bid tab and be able to recommend award, and you'll notify that this is ready for review and approval. The bid statuses, just like the requisition status sheet, the bid status sheet noting the status name column, bids will move through several different statuses on their way to being ready to open, sent, ready to open, opened, evaluated, etc., on their way to being approved. What is a purchase order? Purchase orders, we use those to relay information about our purchased goods or services to vendors. Sometimes we use those for things under $20,000, and other, obviously something over, we would create a contract for. A type of purchase order, again, that we're using in the system is an open market purchase order. So for the most part, procurement will be creating your purchase order. They'll be taking over your procurement at that time and creating that purchase order for you. We will take the bid that where you've recommended award. We will create a PO. We will submit that PO for approval. An under $20,000 procurement, we will set it to what's called a printed status and notify you so that you can then contact your vendor that they can proceed or that procurement is approved. And over $20,000, we will prepare and execute a contract. We'll notify you like we do now, emailing that contract to you and to the vendor so that work can start. And then we'll actually come back into the system and attach that contract via a change order, so that's also viewable that way. We're also providing here the purchase order statuses, so just so you have for reference what steps the purchase order will take as it moves through the system. Moving on to general navigation for BidBuy. There are different user roles for accessing the system. We have a department access, a basic purchasing, some inquiry, maybe a manager might want to see what procurements are moving through but won't have any real involvement in the system. They might want to have an inquiry role only. We have some approvers, obviously, in the system, and then there are some administrative rights. So in terms of functionality, then you're accessing the system based on your role. There are some header and navigation, which allows our movement within the application, provides links to the important functions. There's a control center, which has all the documents that pertain to you through this system. And basically, you'll see very shortly that when we're entering information in the system, we are going to work from left to right in a tabular structure, like we're opening tabs of a folder, a file folder. We're going to be working top to bottom on that screen, and at the bottom of almost every screen is a submit button, which is a save and exit or save and continue. And by the time you observe these examples today, you'll see where those buttons are located. These are some screenshots of the system itself. So you will note by that green arrow, that's where the roles will show. In the training environment, we'll have very limited, some limited roles. It'll say basic purchasing, department access, and inquiry. When you actually become a registered user in BidBuy, you only have one role, so it'll be very easy for you. You won't have to pick a certain role. But we'll be utilizing the basic purchasing function for training. The header level, the header row on the screen provides lots of different information, but one of the things, and we're going to process an example of one of these is searching for something, searching based on the NIDP code. There's some My Account information. For training purposes, please do not adjust the accounting information that you're provided. Once you have your registered vendor information, you can look at and view that account information. But for training purposes, please just utilize the training password information and don't make changes to that. Their current organization, moving to the center of the screen. This says State of Illinois on this screenshot. When you actually log in as a registered user, that will change to the Department of Natural Resources. And then on the right are several icons. But I'm going to point out just a couple here. We're going to do some examples later on. But the magnifying glass is an advanced search function, and that will allow you to, probably the most utilized feature in the program. You can access a lot of your BidBuy documents this way, and we'll show you how to use that. And then on the far right-hand side, there's a door with an arrow. It looks like a door with an arrow leading to the right, and that will actually log you off of the program, and we'll show you that as well. Moving on to the navigation row. We will be utilizing this a lot or you will be as well, to create your documents, start your requisitions, and also can look up some documents and or vendors in BidBuy. And the most important button on this screen on this row is the home screen. So as you're accessing the system and you might be lost and not quite sure where to go next, just click your home button and then start. It takes you back to your home screen, and you can start back over and find where you're located. The Control Center provides information on documents that are yours moving through the system. You might see where your recs or bids are moving. If you're an approver, you see any procurements that you need to approve. If you have some reminders, you can also address those at this level. Now what we'd like to do is move on to actually looking some information up on the system itself. We are going to show you how, if you're following along with your packet, we have some directions for how to look up a master contract without registration in BidBuy. So you only have to register to do this. There's a lot of our master contract information is moving or has moved to BidBuy. So in the future, from now on, you should be looking up your master contracts here. Andy will demo how to look one of these up.
So on your screen is the live version of BidBuy. When you scroll down past the login information, there are several options down here. And to search for master contracts, we'll click on Contract and Bid Search. It'll give us two options, a bid and then contracts and blankets, and we will click that radio button for contracts and blankets. And at that point, we can search by that contract description or by item description. In this case, we will search for herbicide and then hit the Find It button. And there are 6 different contracts that show up for herbicide. And 4 of these are specific to DNR, and 2 of them are CMS statewide master blanket contracts. So if we click on the hyperlink over here in the blue, just clicking on that contract number, essentially it gives us an overview of that procurement and a summary of the information. So like here, the actual contract begin date was October 16th, 2017, and the contract expires on October 15th of 2019. The big question is this a master contract? And that's going to be right there. We'll just make sure that that's a yes. As we scroll down, there's some attachments. We see the vendor information, and down at the bottom is the item information. So you can actually see specific item information from that contract. In this case, there's 41 items, and it might take you a little bit to scroll through each of those. What helps me to find those is we actually look click on the agency attachments, and the contract will actually come up. So this might be what you're used to seeing. This is the actual contract from CMS, and as you scroll down, here are all of the item numbers and with the commodity codes, which makes it a little bit easier to order. So as you are filling out your contract request form and sending the request to Central Procurement for an order against master, it is helpful for you to indicate the line item and the contract number. So here that contract number would be right there, that 18-416 CMS-BOSS4.P.365. You can also search by vendor name if you know a vendor name, or an item description. And so I might just search for fish, knowing that we have a couple of fish master contracts. And when searching for the item, there are quite a few that show up. So again, you can click on those to make sure that those are the ones that you're looking for and that they are indeed a master contract. So from here, I'm going to log into the training environment. You notice all of this information is in blue, and the barcode, or the bar at the top is blue. In the training environment, it's going to be green at the top, and all our links down here are going to be green. So I'm going to log in and go through some general navigation with you. So from here, this is the control center. This is my home screen. And going across here, I have 46 requisitions, 57 bids, a couple of POs. I have 7 procurements that are ready for approvals. And then I have 103 reminders that are looking for. So as we've been doing training, I'm getting a lot of reminders to review things. As Paula mentioned earlier, there's an NIGP code browse up at the top here. You'll also be able to use this search in the items tab, but I will show you how to do this at this point also. So in this case, let's say that we have a dock at a lake that needs to be repaired. So, you know, which NIGP code would you use? Well, you can go through down at the bottom here and try and search, you know, which one of these makes the most sense. What I think is quicker is to just type in a keyword. And so in this case, you know, we're in need of dock repair, so I'm going to hit dock and hit search. And there are several different options. So to refine our search, you know, maybe we add on a little bit to something, so docks, or you could have done docks and piers or something like that. So just by adding an S, it dropped our search function from 10 or 12 items down to 4. So looking at this, you know, waterfront construction services, docks, piers, docks, decking, including maintenance and repair. That sounds exactly like what we're looking for. If you notice that, you know, those service codes are in the 900 series. If you're below 900, you're going to look at actual items. So that NIGP code for 120-35, that is actually if we need a new dock, and they're going to provide us with something off their shelf. But if we're looking for an actual construction services, that's going to be in the 900 series. So that's an example of how to look up an NIGP code.
We will go over that in more of a searchable format again when we get to the item level. And just to point out, Andy is in the basic purchasing tab and the role on that screen. And when you log in for your training to complete your examples, this is make sure that you're in that tab or have that tab selected. And then across it, you can see here again, we talked about that we are in the current organization. That does say DNR, so that is our org. And then on the right-hand side, there's Andy will hover over the log out button. We mentioned that in our screenshot. And now we're also going to Andy can show you a little bit about how to do that advanced search feature before we move on to some of our examples.
So the advanced search, if you click on the magnifying glass there, it brings up a couple different options of document types. So as Paula was going through the different document types, that's something that you can easily search for. So in this case, let's say that we have a bid that we know it started with bid number B3035. So those are the only 4 digits we need. It might be 5 digits, but we just need that final number of that bid, and you can hit find it. And so it's going to pop right up for us. If you know, we'll go back into that advanced search. If you only know, the last 2 digits, and just type in 35, it's going to find every 35 in there. So it won't be as specific. You can also search by description. So later we've bought a lot of canoes in the training environment, so you can just type in canoe in that description, and they pop up there. So there's several ways that you can search and utilize that advanced search function and find the procurement you're looking for. So I just clicked on the home screen, brings me back to that control center. We're going to go through an example over $10,000.
So in your packet, to access your packet and to follow along with Andy as he goes through that, please pull out the small purchase example greater than 10,000. That's the multi-page, but it is the actual requisition for some invasive species services. It says that on the bottom, or at the lower part of that first page. And then associated with that, we will also be utilizing the job aid for a small purchase greater than 10,000. So those 2 documents should be fairly close together in your packet that we submitted to you.
So to start a new requisition, we're going to go from our home screen. We'll click on Documents, hover over the requisitions, and click New. And up this top, we don't have a requisition number yet because we haven't saved anything, so it still says New Requisition. As Paula mentioned, we're going to work through these tabs from left to right, and when we're in each tab, we're going to move from the top to the bottom, filling out the necessary fields. So in this case, you're going to start each short description with DNR, identifying the agency. Type in our short description. In this case, it's Deer Pond Invasive Species Services. You need to select a department and a location. In the live environment, this might be limited to just 1 or 2, depending on your role within the agency. So you will click Office of Land Management, and the location, we'll click one of the regional offices. Moving on, we're going to click on the requisition type, and you will always be using open market requisition type. That allows for us to select a type code. In this case, it's General Services, because we're looking for the invasive species service. In the live environment, you're going to want to ensure that there is a purchaser selected here. If this is not populated, you will want to use your agency procurement liaison. And if you don't know who that is, contact Central Procurement. But in training, that should populate, so you're fine. And we will click Save and Continue down at the bottom. Not all of those fields are going to be required, so go through the job aid and make sure you're filling out each of the ones identified in the job aid and hit Save and Continue.
I just wanted to add, for certain fields, you can, Andy probably showed you there, but there are asterisks, and those are the required ones. So if you don't complete a required field, it will give you a red warning error and have you complete that before you move forward to the next tab.
So once I hit Save and Continue, a confirmation message shows up that says I saved it, and then it assigns a requisition number. And you're going to want to write that requisition number down just so that way it's easier to find as you go through.
And if, for instance, you actually had to walk away from your computer for a little bit. You've already got that requisition number down. There's other ways to find it, but you just as a note, it might be most helpful to just jot that number down on your paperwork that you have. Also, you can see at this point our status has actually created itself, and it is an in progress status, so it's kind of like a draft status while you're working.
So from here, we've completed our General tab, and we're going to move across the top here and hit the Items tab. And there's two options, Search Items and Add Open Market Item. And we're going to add an open market item and complete the specifications as best as possible, being as specific as possible. In this case, it's herbicide application treatment. Sorry while I type.
If you have additional information here, then there's quite a bit of room in that description. We have found that the copy and paste feature does not work very well. So if you have, in terms of copying and pasting from Word, but if you have additional or more in-depth information that you want to provide, you can provide it by attachment. And then when you do that, you need to also see the scope of work that's attached or see the additional diagram or maps that are attached. And you would do that right here in the description.
From here, we've got our description, and it is detailed enough. We've got that. If needed, we'll attach a scope of work. But we'll move on to the quantity tab or section, and we're estimating this to be 500 hours and $60 per hour, and we'll change our unit of measure to hour, HR. It might not be always easy to estimate what you're actually going to spend on a service like this, so that there's three major thresholds that you want to look at. Is it going to be over $2,000? And if yes, then we know it's going to be in BidBuy. Is it going to be over $10,000? And yes, then at least push it over that $10,000 threshold. And then is it going to be over $100,000? And the reason why that's where the breakdown is based on the dollar amount. The higher the dollar amount, the more approvals and different agencies that are going to have to be involved in that procurement. So in this case, we know it's going to be over $10,000. We actually estimated this at 30. So just if you know you're right on the edge, I would err on the side of caution and go a little bit higher, that you're not locked into that price. From here, we're going to add an NIGP code. I showed you how to search for NIGP codes earlier, and I'll go through that again later with the other small purchase. But here, we'll just type those in real quick and hit Save and Exit. Our changes were saved successfully. We added that one line item down below. There is an option to search items, and I will go through that when we go through in under $10,000. So from here, we're moving across the top. Our Vendors tab, we're actually going to fill in the Vendors tab at the bid documents, not at the requisition. Our Address tab, this does have a default, but you can change it as necessary depending on where your ship to and bill to are going to be. Moving across to the Accounting tab, this is going to trigger different approval paths. So don't really look at this as accounting or a fiscal function. Look at this as an approval path function. And go straight down to the Advanced Search on this tab, which is that magnifying glass, and just hit Find It. It'll bring up 4 options for you, and you will click Not Applicable. The other 3 will trigger different approval paths, and typically you will not have to deal with those. Hit Select, and on this page there's a 2-part save process. You're going to hit Save based on percentages and Rebuild for all items. I know that sounds like a lot of steps, but after your first 2 or 3, you'll get the hang of it. From here, we're not using the Routings tab. The Attachments tab, we are going to add 2 files. the first one being a contract request form. So we're going to search for that file, and I have the example on my desktop, contract request, and I'm going to hit save and exit. Didn't like my name there. Let's try. We're going to just do the procurement justification form. I think. Okay, so we're going to add the procurement justification form just down at the bottom here and hit save and exit. And we will add the contract request form. We're going to add another file. And save and exit. There's two files that we've attached. Defaulted is going to be a checkbox that says show vendor. And in this case, we don't want the vendors to see these. These are internal documents. So we're going to uncheck that and hit save and continue.
Before we move off this tab, I just wanted to just remind everyone about your contract request form at this stage. Previously, you would have submitted your contract request form after you knew your exact amount of your procurement. At this point, you will be completing, just like you did an estimate of your items, on your items tab, you will complete your contract request form with an estimate. You'll route that through your channels for approvals, and once that comes back from your fiscal officer approved, then you would attach that approved contract request form here in BidBuy as an estimate. Later on, there will be an opportunity for your fiscal fiscal officer to log in and note your final cost of your procurement for their tracking.
So we've got our two attachments. We've hit save and continue after unchecking show vendor, and we are utilizing the notes here. We don't have any reminders at the moment, so we're going to go to the summary tab, review your information, make sure that you've got your short description, everything's spelled right, our attachments are showing up, and we will hit submit for approval. In the live version, for procurement over $10,000, this is going to go to your procurement liaison. After they have made any changes that they need, it will also go to CMS for their approvals. In the training environment, you can utilize this automatic approval function and save and continue. So once you do have your approvals, your status for your requisition is going to be ready for purchasing. So, it might be the next day when this comes back, or the next 2 days when it comes back. So let's go back to the home screen, and in Recs, there's going to be ready for purchasing. And so if you have ready for purchasing in here that has been approved, you're ready to go, you can click on it straight through there. And so this is the requisition that I just approved or gotten approved. And down at the bottom is a convert to bid. So we will press convert to bid. It asks us for a sure, and we push OK. So it leaves us in that requisition, and it gives us a hyperlink to that new bid. So I'm going to click on that bid hyperlink. And as you see up at the top, it says open market bid. I'm going to write down that bid number, so B-3251.
Even though the numbers of your documents change as it moves through the system, they are all linked together, as Andy noted, by that hyperlink. So once you get into one document, you'll be able to see what the other ones, or how it transitions to the next document in the system.
So it brings you to the summary tab, but as we did before, we're going to move left to right. So we're going to go back over to the general tab. Right away, we get some validation errors that knows that we have to fill out some things. So the type code, we're going to do a small purchase at the bottom here. The bid opening date. We're going to do that for today, or sorry, the bid available date we'll do today. Bid opening date we're going to do is tomorrow. In the live version, we need to set this out for a reasonable amount of time and allow for those approvals as far as your procurement liaison and then also your SPO to approve before it goes out. So this might be a week to 2 weeks, depending on what it is. If it's a new roof and you have to have a vendor conference, you might need to put that out 3 weeks to allow for, one, all of those approvals, and two, the vendor conference to happen. But in training, we're just going to do the next day. We're going to click on this informal bid box, and only in training, we're going to do enable rolling enrollment. This will allow us to actually open the bid today as far as training goes. As you scroll down, you can double check your contact information for, make sure your phone is right. If you want to put an email in there, you can. If there is a bidder conference, you can send that in there and put in a brief description if needed. As you keep going down, there's an asterisk by SPO name, and so you're going to have to enter in my name, Andrew Hennig. And from there, the other asterisk is it subject to small business set-aside? And this is a procurement that is over $2,000 and under $100,000. So yes, it is subject to small business set-aside, but that next question that pops up is, are you utilizing an active small business vendor? And we don't know yet, so we're going to put NA. Down at the bottom, we'll hit Save and Continue, and our change is saved successfully. From here, we're going to review the rest of the tabs. So if you click through, our item didn't change, so hopefully it doesn't. So we'll just make sure that that's correct. Our address didn't change. Accounting is still good. We weren't using the routings tab. Attachments, this is where you would attach, a scope of work or, different diagrams or maps to a site, that sort of thing. Internal notes, if you have any that you want to document in here, just remember that everything is FOIable. The remaining tabs, questions, amendments, Q&As, and reminders, we're not going to worry about those right now. So we're going to actually add our bidders at the bidder tab. So down at the bottom, we're going to click Look Up and Add Vendors. Bring up this search screen. And utilizing that same NIGP code on the Items tab, you would find it from there. So this was So this was 926 and 40. And because we are restricting this to small business vendors, you want to hit Small Business Set Aside, click Yes, and hit Find It. Now, in the live version, hopefully there would be vendors that would show up. In the training environment, we don't have a bunch of trained vendors that have signed up for NIGP codes, so that doesn't really help us. So in the training environment, we're just going to hit the T for train and utilize train vendor 1 and train vendor 2. We're just going to pick 2 and save and exit. Now, just to show you, if I go back into looking up and add vendors, there is a button down here that says Find Vendors for all commodity codes on the bid. This button does not work with the rest of the functionality of the search functions, so do not use this button. Just type in put in your search fields and hit Find It. That's the best way to go. So we've got our 2 vendors. We're going to click Restricted Bid. Only selected vendors can view and respond because this is restricted to small business set aside, and hide bid holder list on the vendor side, and hit Save and Continue. From here, we don't have any questions that we're going to ask. We don't have amendments yet because we haven't applied this. So we're going to move to the summary page, review our information again, and hit Submit for approval. Once you hit Submit for approval, that goes to your procurement liaison, They will approve it and send it off to your state purchasing officer and wait for their approval. In the training environment, again, you can hit automatic approvals and save and continue. Once that is approved, your status will say ready to send, and you'll come down to the bottom and hit send bid. And in this case, you want to change the bid status to sent and notify the vendors. So we'll send the bid. It tells you who those vendors are, which vendors are getting notified, and you push OK. So in the live environment, you wait your 3 or 4 days waiting for those bids to come in, or whatever that bid opening date is. You have to wait until after that time and to see, to actually open the bid. And in the live environment, this open bid option will not populate until that bid opening date has passed. So for training, we're just going to assume that 3 days have passed, our bid opening date has passed, and we're going to hit open bid and see if we got any quotes. So it remains on the summary page, but if you scroll back down to the bottom, there's a bid tab option now, and that's where Paula mentioned earlier is where our quotes are going to be. So if a vendor has submitted quotes through the system, this is where those quotes would be. Vendors are still allowed to email quotes, mail quotes, things like that, drop off quotes. So we're going to say that, we got 2 hard copy quotes from vendors that dropped them off, and we will update those quotes in BidBuy for those vendors. So in this case, we're going to say that we actually didn't get any quotes. Apologize, we're going to move on to page 6 in our example. We're going to say that we didn't get any quotes. So going back to our summary page, we're going to say clone bid, because we want to, we just went out to small business vendors. We didn't get any quotes from small businesses, and now we want to go out to non-registered small businesses. So we can go open it up to everyone else. And so we've gotten our small business set-aside waiver approved, and we're going to clone that bid and hit save and continue after we click our fiscal year. And it comes up with a cloned bid hyperlink. So again, you're going to click on that cloned bid hyperlink and write down that cloned bid, 3252. So once again, it brings us to a summary page. This one is in progress, and we're going to go to the General tab. We're going to have to fill out a little bit of information, but most of it transfers over because we cloned it. But the information we have to fill out is going to be the bid opening date. So again, we'll do tomorrow. Available date, we'll do as today. Click informal bid and enable rolling enrollment for training. The contact information does not come over. So you want to type in your phone number or email address. If there is a pre-bid conference, type that in. Type in your SPO name. And now when it says, is this subject to small business set aside, you still say yes, it is subject to it, but you're going to say no, that we are not utilizing a small business. And the third question that comes up is, did you complete and attach the small business set aside waiver? And you will say yes, because you will be attaching that shortly. Also down at the bottom here is an original bid number. And so you are going to type in that original bid number, and in this case, it was 3251. You hit save and continue, and from here, our items tab didn't change, address didn't change, accounting, routing. So attachments, this is where you're going to attach that small business set-aside waiver, hit add file, and get that signed version from Procurement, and save and exit. And unfortunately, that one didn't work. So we're going to choose different file here, just for an example, and hit save and exit. So our small business set-aside waiver is attached. We do not want to show that to the vendor community, so we're unchecking show vendor and hitting save and continue. So again, our other tabs didn't change, except for we need to add different vendors. So we are going to delete the vendors that are on that bidders tab because those came over from before. Those are our registered small businesses. And we're going to look up and add vendors. So we want to look up and add the vendors that are not registered in the small business program. And so we'll use the same NIGP code, 926-40. And we are not going to check yes or no to that small business set aside. We're just going to leave that blank and hit find it. So that's going to bring up all those vendors that are in that NIGP code. Again, in the training environment, just pick two vendors. We'll do test vendor and test company and save and exit. So here we still have our hide bid holder list on vendor side checked, but we're going to check the unrestricted bid. All vendors can view and respond. So even though these vendors are in that NIGP code, all bidders can now see this this bid. So everybody can bid if they want to, and hit save and continue. From here, we'll go back over to our summary page, hit submit for approval, and again, automatic approval in the training environment. In the live version, again, this is going to go to Central Procurement, your procurement liaison, and the SPO, and it'll be, once approved, it'll be in a ready to send status, and you'll come down here and hit send bid. All right, so now our bid opening date has passed. We've got a couple of quotes that were emailed to us, so I'm going to open that bid, scroll back down to the bottom, and click on our bid tab, and we're going to create those quotes for our vendors. So in this case, the first one, we got a test company, a quote from Test Company. We received it today. And our other required field here is, are you registered and active in the Illinois Procurement Gateway? And in this case, no, because they're a large vendor. So we're going to hit save and continue. So right away, there's a red arrow that says terms and conditions are not acknowledged. That's okay, we're going to do that shortly. That's going to be in this tab. But we're going to move left to right and utilize the items tab first. So from here, we are going to enter in a price of $62 per hour and hit save and continue. There are no questions. Subcontractors are for only $50,000 and above, and so we're just going to use terms and conditions. And this is where we're going to click yes with exceptions. And then type in the notes, paper quote received, exceptions unknown. The reason why we're saying yes with exceptions is so that way it allows us to type something in this field. Hit save and continue. The attachments tab, you would attach the vendor's quote and any emails from that vendor because it is part of the procurement file. It needs to be in BidBuy. So if you get paper documents, you need to attach them here at their quote. Valuations, preferences, we're not utilizing, so we're going to go to the summary page and select submit quote down at the bottom. And it asks you if you're sure, and we say yes. From here, we're going to go back out to the bid because we have another quote to enter. It's going to bring us to that summary page, and we're going to click on the bid tab again. As you can see, we've got one vendor that it did quote. We just entered that one for Test Company. And we're going to also create a new quote for test vendor name. The received by date, again, we received it today. They are not in the Illinois Procurement Gateway, so we'll hit save and continue. Move to your items tab, type in their price, hit Save and Continue, and go to Terms and Conditions. And again, since they submitted a paper quote, do Yes with exceptions and exceptions unknown. And Save and Continue. We would attach that paper quote again and any other emails that they've sent and move over to the summary page, scroll to the bottom, and hit Submit Quote. So from here we have both of our vendors' quotes in there, but to get back to that bid tab, we have to go back to the bid, scroll to the bottom of the summary page, and hit Bid tab, and here are our two vendors. So you're going to click the Items tab, and it shows you conveniently both vendors' quotes. It gives a double asterisk by the lowest quoted vendor, and you're going to click Award All. And then it asks if you want to proceed, and you push OK. From here, there is an option to submit for approval, but because that locks down that bid tab and doesn't allow Central Procurement to add any other required information, we're going to go back out to the bid and send a reminder to your fiscal officer. This is done by selecting the date that it's due. So we're going to say, in 3 days, review for approval. And again, any of these comments that are in here are foilable. You're going to do remind whom. So in this case, I'm going to say, Von Bandy is going to be my fiscal officer. And days prior to remind 3. So that way they get an email. I'm going to click that send email box. They'll get an email today, and in that body of that email, it's going to say whatever you type in this comment section. And hit Save and Continue. So Von will get that email, and he will also see a reminder on his home page of BidBuy. From there, after your fiscal officer approves that final amount, they're going to send that off to Central Procurement. They have a few things to do based on that dollar amount. If it's over $10,000, they need the comptroller offset print off to check debt with the state. If it's over $20,000, they need to start finalize a contract and get some other approvals. And if it's over $50,000, there's Board of Elections, financial disclosures, Secretary of State, all sorts of other fun things that you generally don't need to worry about. So from this point, you've sent your reminder to your fiscal officer. You wait for Central Procurement to say, here's a contract, or your purchase order is ready to go and in sent status. So you hit Save and Continue and sit back and wait for that to happen. So once your fiscal officer has completed their review, they will put a date completed here. Click the date that is completed. They'll hit Save and Continue, and then they will remind Central Procurement to review it. They'll send that reminder and send the email. So that way, Central Procurement knows, hey, it's your turn. Finalize this procurement. So once Central Procurement has done their complete review and gotten all the approvals, what does that purchase order look like, and what do you do with it? So I'm going to go to a completed purchase order to show you an example. So down at the bottom, we can print the vendor copy. And this is what the procurement, or the purchase order shows.
So your DNR procurement will actually handle creating and conducting the approvals of that purchase order. And you can see both in your example and then in your job aid what steps those take place there. But then what happens for an under $20,000 procurement, this purchase order can be utilized to send to the vendor for completion just let them know that your procurement is approved and that work can continue. So on this purchase order, you'll see that it actually has a number, and then it shows you the vendor information on the left side of the screen, a ship to and bill to, and if it's a service, you might have can choose a not applicable. There's a not applicable code, address rather, for shipping, and if it's just a service and it doesn't actually have a ship to. And there also is information then with the description about the procurement and the cost. So this is a good page of the purchase order, and this actually goes for 2 pages here. And then a page of this purchase order that can be confusing to vendors is this page, the signature page. Because it's under $20,000, it's not actually, doesn't require signatures on either the vendor's part or DNR's, but it is a default built-in the system created form. So what we have found to do, it's easiest to do, is you can either print this off and not utilize that page, or if you do use this page, just write NA on some of those boxes so that the vendor, when they do get it, they know that they're not required to sign it. As vendors are learning the system, there are repeated vendors, are vendors that receive more than one procurement with us are in the system. They are understanding that they don't have to sign it, but early on we're finding that vendors are a little bit confused about this page. So when you do provide this document to them, you might not want to utilize that signature page. The system can actually send this PO directly to the vendor for some smaller items, smaller equipment items or commodity items. This probably is an acceptable document to send by itself. For sort of service type project where you want to provide additional information, the system doesn't really allow you to add additional notes to the vendor, like contact their site office or this person before you begin work, etc. So it's probably best then to actually take this document, save it to your desktop, and then send it via email within other instructions that you want to include to the vendor and letting them know that work can continue.
Good. From here, we're going to do that example under $10,000. So as you're going through your packet, the next one is a small purchase example under $10,000 procurement, and right after that is the job aid for a small purchase under $10,000. Again, I'm going to go through the example. That job aid is there for you as you do a live version, and it'll help you identify what areas that you must fill out. So let's purchase a canoe. So since I want to get back to the home screen, I can just click Home and start a new requisition. So Documents, Requisition, and New. And once again, we're going to start with a short description. And in this case, Cache River Canoes, and I typed in DNR first. We're going to do Office of Law Enforcement and Administration Division. Again, your location and department should almost be defaulted. You should only have a couple options. Our requisition type is going to be open market again. And in this case, our type code is going to be equipment. From there, I'll hit Save and Continue. And once again, we have a requisition number up the top that we're going to write down. And that's 7473. Just another note on that general tab, make sure that a purchaser is in this drop-down box. And if you need to put a procurement liaison in there, that is where that would go. From here, we're going to move to the Items tab. And we've got 2 different options again. We've got Add Open Market Item and canoe, or Search Items. So let's just say we've ordered this many times in the past. So I can actually use this Search Items function. and I'll do the plus for the advanced search, and in the item description, I'm just going to type in canoe, because I know I've ordered canoes in the past. And so every time I've ordered a canoe in the past, it's going to show up down here, and what that history was, what that purchase order is, that sort of thing. So I can select that, put in a quantity, and hit add to rec and exit. So that's going to actually give me those that item, and I don't have to even type in all that information. But to show you how to do the NIGP codes again, I'm going to delete that item and do it using the add open market item. We're going to do canoe, and again, we want to be as specific as possible, so we're going to say 24-foot, 3 seats, and camouflaged. Our quantity is going to be 4, and we're estimating these at $600 a piece, and our unit of measure is each. We are estimating this to be over $2,000, so that's why it's going to be in BidBuy. So again, we don't have to be exact with our unit cost here, it's just an estimate. So we want to search for that NIGP code. We give it to you in the example, but just another way to search for this, type in your keyword, hit search, and we get 3 different options for canoes. And so we've got a 120 code and 2 900 codes, and we know that we want an actual canoe. We don't want, boat rental and lease and construction services for boats. We want an actual canoe. So we're going to click that 120-30 and hit save and exit. So that'll populate that field for us. From there, we're going to hit save and exit to add our item to that items tab. For now, we are going to skip the vendors tab and come back to it. We're going to review our address, make sure that's correct. In this case, that's our option. Accounting is going to be the exact same as before. We're going to do the magnifying glass, hit find it, and choose not applicable. This isn't a special procurement type, so we're just going to hit not applicable and select. Again, there's that 2-part save process, save based on percentages, and rebuild for all items. And our red error message should be going away. There we go. From here, we're not utilizing the routings tab, so we're going to move to the attachments. And because this is under $10,000, we do not need a procurement justification form, but we do need that contract request form. So I'll hit add file and attach your completed and signed by fiscal contract request form. Save and exit. And just as before, make sure you're not showing the vendor that if you don't need to. On your requisition, if you had additional items like a smaller scope of work or a diagram or something, you can attach those there.
Just to add on that, if you have some issue with attaching some files, you've noticed maybe in our training that we had a couple error messages. The system does not like or does not accept special characters. So if you have a special character in your file name, you would receive an error message. So we had a couple samples there that had a couple special characters in them, and that's why the error message was there. So just please note that when you're attaching your documents, you can use numbers and you can use letters, but beyond that, just keep it simple in your file name attachments.
All right, so we've saved and continued. We don't have any notes or reminders at this point, so we're going to go back to our vendors tab and actually find vendors in that NIGP code and send out that solicitation to the vendors through the requisition. This is made so for between 2,000 and 10,000, it's a lot quicker and goes through less approval paths. So in this case, we're going to look up and add vendors. Again, you'll look up under that NIGP code, but since we don't have those codes in the training environment, we don't have vendors registered, we're just going to hit that T, and we're going to find that train vendor 1, train vendor 2 again. Hit save and exit. So we've got our small business vendors. we're going to check Publish Informal Bid on Web and Restricted Informal Bid. So we're going to restrict this to those small business vendors in that NIGP code. And from here, we're going to do a bid ending date, which we will put as tomorrow, and a bid available date as right now. As soon as you push this, if you do that right now, it's going to be accessible by vendors in BidBuy. Once you hit save and continue, if you scroll back down to the bottom, there is a notify vendors option. So you do want, it is common courtesy to send that notification out to vendors that, hey, there is a bid in BidBuy. So we will click send notification to those two vendors, send notification, and it comes up with an email that is going to go out to those vendors. And so you can double check your information here, make sure your email is correct or your phone number, and send notification. At this point, you would wait and wait for that bid ending date, which would be tomorrow, to see if you received any quotes, either via email or through the system. In this case, once again, we're just going to assume that we did not get any quotes. So we're going to move over to the Summary tab. And down at the bottom is a clone requisition. So we didn't submit anything for approval. We have got our contract request form, and we've contacted vendors. They didn't get anything, so we're going to ask Central Procurement for a small business set-aside waiver to go out to non-registered small businesses. On that small business set-aside waiver, you will want to put your original requisition number, so that way Central Procurement can make sure that you did go out to the proper small business vendors, and we gave them enough time and all that fun stuff. Once you have that small business set-aside waiver, you're going to hit Clone Requisition, choose your fiscal year, and hit Save and Continue. Same thing when we clone that bid, there's a new requisition number up at the top with a hyperlink. It says Cloned Requisition, and you can click on that. It's going to be 7474. And it brings you to that summary page. On the General tab, you will want to put that old requisition number in that old contract number slot. So, 7473. And hit Save and Continue. All of that other information has come over for us. So we didn't have to choose a requisition type, a type code. All of that has come over. If we click over to our Items tab, all of that is still there. And in the Attachments tab, you will want to attach that small business set-aside waiver. So we'll add that file. And save and exit. Again, that was the error that Paula was talking about. So again, that small business set-aside waiver needs to be approved and signed before you go out to those registered, non-registered small businesses. You'll hit uncheck that Show Vendor, hit Save and Continue. From here, we'll go back to our Vendors tab. We're going to delete off those two small businesses that we had before. So hit Delete All, Save and Continue, push OK. And once again, we'll go and look up and add vendors that are not registered small businesses. So we'll go through our NIGP code. Oops, wrong one. Canoes and kayaks. And you either don't select anything or select that space above there, so we're not selecting yes or no, and hit Find It. In the there is actually one vendor that shows up there, and that's Train Vendor 2. But in training, we're just going to select two vendors. So we'll do Test Company and Test Vendor Name, and Save and Exit. So there's our non-small business vendors. We're going to do publish informal bid on web and unrestricted informal bid so that all vendors can view and respond. Again, that bid ending date, do a reasonable amount of time. So if it is something that's off the shelf, that might be done in 2 or 3 days. If it's more of a service that, vendors are going to have to come out and look at it, or vendors need to really think about how they would be able to perform that process or that service, you might need to give them a week. It just depends on what that product or service is. And then the bid available date we'll do right now. Again, that allows vendors to see it right now and hit save and continue. Once again, we're going to notify the vendors. Select the vendors we're notifying, and then they'll come up with this email address, or email again. We understand that there are vendors that are not registered in BidBuy yet, and you might know of them and might have their email address. So you can copy and paste this email into your work email and send it to those vendors, essentially giving them that same information of this is the BidBuy requisition number defined, this is what you're procuring, that short description, and so you're not giving any information out that not everybody or everybody else doesn't have. So once you double check your information there, you can hit send notification, and it'll pop up with who it's sent to. If you do send emails outside of that system, that does need to be part of the procurement file, so you will have to attach that communication in the attachments tab. Again, not showing those vendors.
And every vendor that submits a quote will need to be in BidBuy. So this just gives you an avenue to reach out to those. Maybe there's a local vendor down the street who's not really in BidBuy yet, and you like to utilize them, but they're not yet in BidBuy. And this gives them a way to be informed about the procurement, but also directs them to get registered in BidBuy, which they can do fairly simply, and then they would be able to upload their quote and also recommend a vendor award. They have to be in BidBuy to be recommended for award.
So let's say it's been a couple of days. We're going to go back out to the home screen and search for our, do our advanced search. It's a requisition, and we wrote down our number, so 7474, hit find it, and there we go, there's our cloned requisition. And on the vendors tab, this is past our bid ending date. If vendors quoted through the system, there would be an informal quote here that said review and edit. But because we don't have these trained vendors submitting quotes, we're going to submit those quotes for them. So you can click create and just type in the dollar amount. And so one of them is 600. Save and exit. And as you can see, it has changed from to view to and edit. And we'll create that other quote for the next vendor and save and exit. Again, if you got paper quotes, any of that emails from vendors, those need to be attached. But this is a much quicker and easier way to add those quotes in. If you remember which one was the lower cost, you can recommend that vendor here, or for a good way to see, it's an informal quote tabulation, especially when there's multiple vendors. You can click on that, and that list comes up, and right away you can see that test company was the low bidder, so you can hit apply pricing, hit OK, and apply pricing to rec items. Hit OK. Oh, we just hit close the window. So we're going to, after we've applied it, we've got those check boxes there, we're going to hit close window. From here, we've attached all of our vendors' requisitions, so we're going to go to Summary, scroll down to the bottom, hit Submit for Approval, and in Train, you can do automatic approval. In the live environment, this will go on to your procurement liaison, and fiscal. And so that will go on to such procurement, and once approved, they will create that purchase order and notify you when that is ready. So from here we have a couple other slides.
To finish out our presentation, bring it back to the slide program. So if you wanted to utilize your handout for that, you can do that as well. But we are back on page 17 of the actual handout itself, and this is one. Once you are receive your registration, your BidBuy registration, you will actually log in on this BidBuy website, and that's also a location where you can find additional resources about BidBuy itself. And there's lots of different materials out there, other webinars. This one we've designed to be specifically for DNR and DNR's procurement process. So you can see those other ones and find out other material, but we're trying to provide some very agent-specific material for this training to you. Also wanted to note that in your handout for additional information is a small purchase, or in your packet is a small purchase process and procedure handout that gives you guidance on the actual small purchase process for the agency. And actually this is a Chief Procurement Office process and procedures, but we, again, tweaked it for the DNR specific process. Once you receive your registration, if you need end user support or end user assistance, and as you complete your procurements, and if you call for assistance, actually maybe first you might want to phone a friend. If there's someone else who you know of near you that has gone to training or is also entering procurement, you could ask them for assistance. You might then also call the procurement liaison or a BidBuy trainer, myself, or your procurement manager, who would be able to assist you with your procurement. One of the first things we're going to ask you is if you have followed your job aid. So we've worked very hard to make sure that that job aid is helpful in terms of entering your procurement and a step-by-step guide. So please refer to that. And then as questions get more specific in terms regarding the system, procurement is able to elevate that question up through our state purchasing officer and then also to the BidBuy help desk. But please ask internally first, and then we would advance your question forward. Following registration, we've also created an email group that would provide some additional tips and guidance as we all learn the system better. That might be helpful to all of us as we enter our procurements. So we'll be providing information or additional information to you after you get your registration, if the job aids get updated, or if there's maybe little reminders that we notice might be helpful to folks or staff as they enter their procurements. So what are the next steps after you've completed this training, or after you've listened to our presentation today? You should have received a training login, an ID and password from procurement. You will actually use the train environment at this website to complete your exercises. They're the examples that we've provided. So you will log into that training environment, and then you will complete both the above $10,000 purchase and the below $10,000 purchase. Then you will email DNR Procurement, the person who emailed you your packet of information. You'll provide them the requisition number. You remember you're noting all your document numbers as they move through the system, but you'll provide your requisition number of both of those examples to your procurement contact for them to review those examples. Procurement will review to make sure that that BidBuy process was followed based on the job aids and the examples. Then we will provide you a registration form to complete, just a couple things that need to be completed, and then your signature on that form. And once that form is received by our office and then processed by the BidBuy help desk, they will send you your registration credentials, your actual login and password for entering the live or production side of the BidBuy system, where you can begin entering your procurements.
From here, before we end, I'm going to show you some real quick how to get to those resources that Paula was talking about. So from the home screen of the BidBuy system, there's a State of Illinois internal users right at the top, and for more information about BidBuy, you can click here. There's also information for vendors. So if you have vendors asking you questions, there's all sorts of resources for them too, including webinars and videos and different access to help. So you can provide them with that email address down here or the phone number for that help desk that they can get registered or ask any questions. For you, if you click here under the State of Illinois internal users, it brings you out to the Chief Procurement Office website, and there's BidBuy resources for vendors or BidBuy resources for state agencies. So you can click on for state agencies, and there's all sorts of different processes for procurements. Yours are all going to be down here in that small purchase part, and then there's also a video library, frequently asked questions, and another reference library. So if you have questions, some of those answers might be here, but check with your procurement liaison, your procurement manager first, and they should be able to help you as well.
With that, we will conclude the training session. Thank you very much for your interest in procurement and for assisting with small purchasing for your office. From this point forward now, please complete your online training, completing the examples with that login, the BidBuy training login and ID that you were provided. You provided this login for a short amount of time, so please, it's just strongly encouraged that you would go and complete your examples as quickly after watching this video as possible. If you have any questions about accessing the BidBuy training website or about what you're actually completing for your exercises, please contact the procurement person, staff person who emailed you your packet of information. Thank you very much.